Vayikra el Moshe. And Hashem called to Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem Elov Me'omed Lemor. And Hashem spoke to him, Me'omed Lemor. So two things, which is obvious right away. Vayikra, the Aleph is small. What is the significance of the Aleph not being the same size as all the other letters? And in the Torah, it's written smaller. And the Torah says, Vayidaber Hashem Elov. Hashem spoke to him. The inference to him means only him and to no one else. Elov is a personalization. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Elov comes to exclude Aaron. You would think maybe Aaron, being at that special level, Hashem commuted Torah not only to Moshe, but even to Aaron. Elov means only to Moshe, to exclude Aaron. And we'll see Rashi in a moment. If you look in the Balaturim, if you have a Gros Gedolos Chumash, the Balaturim speaks about the small Aleph in the Vayikra. He says, Vayikra, Aleph, the Vayikra Ze'ira. The Aleph in the word Vayikra is smaller. Shemoshe hoya godol v'onov, lo rotze lichtov ela Vayikor, lo shen mikre. Moshe, because of his greatness, v'onov, but he was the most humble, he did not want the word Vayikra should be stated. It should say Vayikor. In Hebrew, the word mikra means it's just coincidental. It's happenstance. Lo shemikra kilo diber HaKadosh Baruch Hu ela b'chalom kimo keder she'oma b'bilam. As it's Vayikra, it's not on a permanent level. It's not on an ongoing level, but it's just Hashem happened to speak to him, like two people, they happened to meet on the way. Vayikra means it's something which is much more permanent, much more specific, it's pre-designated. Ki lo nira lo Hashem ela b'mikra. Moshe wanted to conceal, because of his level of humility, it should say Vayikor. Otherwise, it goes and it magnifies and makes it obvious who Moshe is. So Moshe says to Hashem, if you want to write the Aleph, write it in a very small size. Bishar Alfin. Torah, the Kosva Ketana. It should be smaller than all the other Alephs in the Torah, which are the same size as the word itself. It should be made smaller, which means that it should be less noticed, less obvious. So it's very interesting. Hashem wanted to write it Vayikra, bold, like everything else. Moshe said because of his anivus, because of his unequaled humility, he says, I prefer it's been written Vayikor. Mikra. Not to identify who I really am. So Hashem says, we'll make a compromise. You should be less noticed, we'll write it Aleph. So it comes out this way. Because of Moshe Rabbeinu's exceptional humility, we see really who he is. The Aleph tells us this is on an ongoing, permanent level. Hashem communicates with Moshe. So that we have questions, so why is it smaller? Because Moshe wanted to borech min hakavod. He wanted to flee from honor, and Hashem says, not a problem, we'll make it smaller. To indicate, although you're great, you want to be minimized. To understand exactly who Moshe was, that Moshe was the owner of Bikol Adam. I mean, here, it's not, this is someone else wants to acknowledge you. He said, what's the value of that acknowledgement? Hashem himself wants to acknowledge who you are. This is the ultimate. But who I am only, my whole value is only you. So if that's the case, I have no identity. So Hashem says, if that's the case, the Aleph will be written smaller, that it should be obvious exactly the way you want to be perceived. So you'll be perceived really as what? As the Eved Hashem, that you have no identity, but we need the Aleph to indicate exactly the value of our relationship. So therefore we need the Aleph. This is the understanding.
The small Aleph, though, is us on exactly what Moshe didn't want us to focus
on. Exactly. No, but what does a small Aleph indicate? Small Aleph indicates his humility, but what it does, what did Hashem agree to this? The whole idea is, Korach came with a point, that you chose a younger cousin to be the head of the family of the Levium. That you chose your brother to be the Kohen Gadol and his sons to be their assistants, and this. It's all nepotism. Hashem is saying, if it says Vayikro with a small aleph, the whole concept of nepotism is only because I have a self-interest. Moshe himself wants to be identified that he has no identity. He has no self-interest. Exactly this point, Moshe is honored to be Kavod. And because if that's the case, we have to say, and that's the reason why he was chosen to be the conduit for the Torah, because there's no barriers. There's not a question that, when you put something in a glass, it's interesting. The Gemara says in Tainus that Torah is compared to three liquids: mayim, yain, v'cholov. Water, because just as water flows from a high location or low location, Torah can only be acquired by someone who has a humble spirit, humble mind. So therefore, that's water, the characteristic that flows from a higher location or low location. Wine, that if it's not kept in a earthen cask, the properties of the material intermingle with the wine and cause the wine to spoil. Even if that is gold or silver, which the Gemara tells over the story with the daughter of the emperor, the Roman emperor, how the wine spoiled, and milk, because any degree of uncleanliness which goes into milk, the milk spoils immediately. So it's interesting. Wine, I always say, if you take a foul glass, which has something else was there before, and you put wine in that glass, what happens to the wine? It actually takes on the taste of whatever's in that glass. A person himself who has any level of ego, self-interest, it's like people say, did you hear what I said? Did you appreciate my insight? So you say to the person, if factually the Torah is saying that, so it's what God's saying. And if it's what you're saying, I could go listen to something else. It's not, but that has to do with one's humility. Moshe Rabbeinu, there wasn't a question that anything that he communicated to us I'll use the word, was tainted by a human input to any degree. He was purely only a pass-through. That's what he was. There was no filtering. There was nothing. He was only, as it says in Chazal, Hashchina medaberes to grono. When Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, it says the Shechina was speaking through his throat. That's all it was. Moshe was the amplifier, so to say. He amplified it to Klal Yisrael, which we'll discuss in a moment. So the Aleph, the significance of the Aleph is to communicate that every communication was at a level that he doesn't want to be identified with that communication because of what? Because there shouldn't be a consideration that Moshe had any input in the Torah itself. It's purely unadulterated. And that's what's Moshe emes v'Torah emes, right? That was the whole, after the incident of Korach and the story I told over the Gemara in Bava Basra tells the story with the Arab and the Amora, when he put his ear to the location in the desert where smoke was coming out, he heard a unison group of people saying, Moshe emes v'Torah emes v'anachnu badoim. Moshe is true, his Torah is true, and we are liars. That was Korach and his what was the accusation? It's nepotism. Moshe has his input in Torah. Moshe has no input in Torah. Moshe is only communicating exactly what Hashem communicated. He was only, through him it was transmitted. That's exactly what it is. So that's the significance of the Aleph.
Rabbi, also when you break up the Aleph, an Aleph is a Yud, a Vav, and a Yud.
Okay.
It's 26. Which is Yud, K, Vav, K.
Are you quoting someone? Alan, are you quoting someone?
Rabbi, I read a lot.
I got it. It says, we need the Gula really badly. So try to remember the sources of what you say. Okay.
Yeah, I wish I did. I don't remember where I read it.
Okay.
But anyway, but the Aleph, again, signifies, the essence of, from Hashem.
It's Aleph represents Echod, right? Echod. It's interesting. The Midrash, right at the beginning of Parshas Bereshis, it's a Yalkut. All the letters of the Aleph base came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, create create the world with the spirituality which lies within this letter. So which letter came first? The Aleph. So why should the Aleph be the obvious letter to be, the world should be created? Because there's a Shema Yisrael Hashem Echod. Echod, Aleph, or Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Aleph. So Hashem says, yeah, but it says in the Torah, Orur. Orur also begins with Aleph. Therefore, it doesn't make the grade. Does not make the grade. Okay? So Aleph, it's Yud K, Vav K, but even, there are always two sides to every coin.